How's it going, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. Uh, a lot to get into this week. We are continuing the team previews. This week, I'll be going over St. Mary's, LMU, and Pacific. And I was also able to grab head coach of the Lions, Stan Johnson. So we'll talk with him a little bit about where he sees his LMU squad heading, how they look early on. Obviously, there's only been a couple weeks of practice, so still a lot to kind of look at and get into, but some exciting stuff. We'll dive into previewing all three teams, but we're going to start with WCC Media Day, which was just this past week, and for sake of conversation, what was also released was the WCC preseason poll, as well as the all WCC teams. So both were released this past week, and just taking a look at the lists of what we have here, the first thing that's going to stand out is obviously where everyone was picked, and it starts off with St. Mary's being the coach's pick to win the WCC, not Gonzaga. And obviously, like, it's usually a shock whenever Gonzaga is not picked to win the league. But I think there's also something to be said about just what we know of St. Mary's going into the year and what we don't know about Gonzaga. We know what some of the known commodities are for St. Mary's. We know about Aiden Mahaney. We know about Mitchell Saxon coming back. We know about Alex Dukas, all of whom made the all WCC team. We know that this is a deeper bench. They return near everyone. They return most of the scoring from a year ago. Yes, and we'll dive into exactly what they lose. But there's a lot of known parts to St. Mary's. And then on the flip side for Gonzaga, it's a lot of unknown. A lot of new guys going to be in the starting lineup, a lot of new guys who are going to be coming off the bench. You do have Nolan Hickman, Anton Watson, and Ben Gregg, who are the known guys of this squad. But everybody else, while there's a lot of talent, a lot of high expectations, there's still a lot of mystery to what we might see. And that's probably why we saw St. Mary's end up being number one and not Gonzaga. And a quick note on that, it's not like it's a huge difference between the total point total and the number of coaches that picked St. Mary's over Gonzaga. It was 5-4, and then it was 61-60 in the total points. So let's not actually dive you can't read too much into it, because essentially it was a coin flip. And I think that's really what it does seem like going into the year, that it will be a coin flip between St. Mary's and Gonzaga. It was the first time the St. Mary's was picked to win the league since 2017, 2018. As a number of Gonzaga folks have pointed out on social media in the last week, last time that did happen, Gonzaga ended up sweeping the regular season and the tournament title outright. So St. Mary's missed the tournament that year. So it wasn't like just because St. Mary's was picked that they ended up winning the league. Obviously, we know that this is way early. There's a lot of unknowns. You don't know what's going to happen as the season rolls on. But St. Mary's won, Gonzaga 2. That was the pick by the coaches. The next kind of interesting thing was going to be, where did the coaches have this next lot of three, which I think seems like the clear separation of LMU, USF, and Santa Clara, and how did they rank these three, and where did they see those three finishing up? And to no surprise to me, they also are lumped very closely together. And the way it ended up going was USF was 3, LMU 4, and Santa Clara 5. The three of them separated by a total of 4 points, 45, 42, and 41, respectively. So I think this is another case of kind of flip a coin, roll the dice, because any one of these three could end up in third. Any one of these three could end up in fifth. I think there's a lot. All three of them did very well in the portal. All three of them, I think, have a lot of expectations going into the year. And it's going to be really fascinating to see how that all works out. And then the rest of the poll, Portland at 6, kind of no surprise for me there. And then at the bottom tier, Pepperdine at 7, Pacific at 8, and San Diego 9. The only thing I might have changed in here, the way I think it might end up working out, is I might have flipped Pepperdine and Pacific. But really, that's kind of where I would. This is close to where I'm going to have everything. Obviously, a few weeks left. Some things can happen. Injuries can happen. We can get reports on health, whatnot. So, yeah, it's not far off from what I think most everyone is anticipating for this conference this year. And then the preseason team. And yes, I know that one of the big complaints that a lot of people have with the WCC teams is that there are 10 members of the first team, and why don't you just make a second team out of that, or if you have a second team, or then make it 3 teams. In any case, there are 10 members of the all WCC preseason team. And as I mentioned before, Alex Dukas, Aidan Mahaney, and Mitchell Saxon are the 3 St. Mary's representatives. Gonzaga also has 3 Graham Ike, Ryan Nemhard, and Anton Watson. Portland with 1 rep, Tyler Robertson. Pepperdine with a couple with Houston Millette and Javon Porter. LMU with Kelly Laupepe. And that rounds out the all WCC team for the preseason. No surprises really. I think what you have is a lot of, again, known commodities, known ability levels in the WCC, and that's what's represented here. I think you took the 3 best from Gonzaga, you took the 3 best from St. Mary's. That makes sense. You have Houston Millette and Javon Porter. I don't think anybody doubts what those 2 are capable of down at Pepperdine. Porter, I've mentioned, is probably maybe the best NBA prospect of anybody in this class. I think you had to get Kelly Laupepe on this list, one of the tougher players in the league, one of the more experienced guys in this league. I don't think there was a way around not having him on that team. Same goes for Tyler Robertson. Like, you're talking about overall, like, well-rounded players. Like, Tyler Robertson is one of those guys in the league. And then because you have a lot of new faces around the league otherwise. So I think this was kind of a fair assessment. I know, like, there were some people, I saw some chatter about there's no one from USF, no one from Santa Clara. I don't think that should necessarily be a surprise right now, because a lot of new pieces. And so we'll just have to see how that all goes, because for Santa Clara, you don't have like a Keyshawn Justice. You don't have a Brandon Pajemski right now. Maybe there are guys on this roster who turn into them. A few guys I could see breaking into this list by the time we get the season end, like Christoph Tilley, Adama Ball. We could see Mike Sharavjams jump into here. Could be Jonathan Mogbo. Like, there's plenty of candidates on these teams to make an all WCC team by the end of the year. But I think, like, far as the all WCC team as it is, this 10 makes sense. There's not a whole lot I would really like scoff at or disagree with. So what we have, I think, works. And I don't really have any complaints. Or again, like, I'm not going to overanalyze, because you can overanalyze these to the end of days of just like, oh, does this fit? Does that fit? It's like, the fact is, like, we haven't played a game yet. And we don't have it's another few weeks before we play a game. I'm not going to read too much into what this list is. But these are established guys who make sense to be on that sort of list. All right. And with that, I'm going to transition into the team previews. And with no real segue, we're going to start this one with St. Mary's. And for St. Mary's, I have long thought that this is a year where they could break through. Well, not, I want to say breakthrough, because, like, obviously they've been a 5 seed the last couple of years. This is a team that got to the second round of the tournament a year ago. This is a team that won 27 games. They were tied for first. It was a disaster in the conference title game, but this was a team that maybe played the toughest game, the most competitive game against UConn in the entire tournament a year ago. And who knows if Alex Dukas remains healthy, how that game ends up. I don't think that necessarily means that they win, but that game could have been far more competitive going down the road if he had stayed healthy. So, thinking about this St. Mary's team, where this team is, high expectations, as is normal. I think it's very safe to say that this is a team that expects to not only be back in the NCAA tournament, but also does expect to be a higher, like somewhere in a top 6 seed in their region. I don't think that's far-fetched. I don't think that's out of line. I think this team has the ability to do so. But they do lose a couple of key pieces, and I think we can't lose sight of that Logan Johnson and Kyle Bowen really were the key components to this gritty, not pretty mentality that this St. Mary's team has had over the last few years. Logan Johnson, arguably the best on-ball defender on the West Coast, or if not one of. He obviously one of the best defenders on the West Coast. If you could stick a guy on him and that you didn't have to worry the rest of the night. He was that good a defender. Kyle Bowen was kind of like was the anchor down low defensively. Like he was another guy. It's like you can he was going to be that quarterback back there and really be directing traffic. So between those two, you lose a lot of toughness. You lose a lot of leadership. You lose the key components to a team that was a top 15 defensive team each of the last 3 years. And while I don't think there's going to be a huge drop-off on that front, there will be a drop-off. I don't think you can look at this team and not think that there will be at least a little bit of a defensive drop-off from that elite level that they were with those two guys, because they don't have a Logan Johnson on this team. They don't have a Kyle Bowen on this team. But they still have a lot. And it all starts with Aidan Mahaney. Aidan Mahaney was the breakout star of a year ago. We know what he was able to accomplish, what he did against Gonzaga in Moraga to lift them to that win. We know what he did at BYU in the final game in the Marriott Center. He was the guy that became the focal point of the scouting reports when playing St. Mary's. He was the guy who changed games for this team. And as the season went along, you saw that he was able to make adjustments here and there. But in the second round in WCC play, you saw teams make adjustments to him. Gonzaga made adjustments to him. BYU started to make adjustments. Santa Clara started to make adjustments. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the adjustments always worked, but in Gonzaga's case, it absolutely did. UConn replicated some of those challenges. VCU replicated some of those challenges in the NCAA tournament. And we saw him struggle down the stretch later in the season. Now, part of that is going to be he was a true freshman. He's still learning the physicality of the game and how teams adjust, and he's going to have to learn how to adjust back. That's the challenge for this year. Can Aidan Mahaney come around and make the adjustments that are going to be necessary to be able to be successful this time around? I mean, he's going to be the lead on any scout for teams going into this season. He's been one of the more talked about players in all of college basketball going into the year. He is a star, and there's no way to get around that. He is probably one of the more decorated freshmen coming out of St. Mary's, or like one of the more successful freshmen going into his second year at St. Mary's. The only two that are even comparable to what Mahaney has done in year one is going to be Matthew Dellavedova or Patty Mills. those are really the only two who really kind of match up to the level of play, and then you can you can argue between those three of who actually was um, better. But again, Mahaney is going to be is a key component to what St. Mary's does this year. His increased strength, his ability to adjust, because we know like he can score, and it's just going to be a matter of um, how he's able to evolve his game going into year two. And obviously it's not all Mahaney, because this team is deep. This team is really deep. And I think one of the guys that I think is going to be a huge component to this year, and I think a lot of people who have watched also are in this camp. Justin Joyner, who St. Mary's associate head coach, who came on earlier in the summer. We talked about this then. Is the progress of Augustas Marciulionis and what he is going to mean for this team. This was a guy who he has in year one. He was the starter initially, and then Tommy Kuzi took over. He was the starter initially last year, and then Aiden Mahaney took over. So he's had opportunities, and it didn't look great at times. But what we saw toward the end of last year was his growing leadership and how he was able to step up in those moments in which Mahaney struggled a bit more. We saw it in the NCAA tournament. We saw it against UConn. We saw it against VCU. Marciulionis was starting to take more of that role, be more assertive offensively, and that's something that is going to be critical for St. Mary's, is how he is able to make that leap, how he is able to make that jump. He's going to be one of the starters in that backcourt with Mahaney going into the year. And so this year, I fully expect him to remain in the starting lineup for the duration of the year. I think this is a year where we do see a big jump from him. So I think it's going to just be something to watch for. I really like the progression he's had, so I expect big things out of Marciulionis. Mitchell Saxon, I think we're just going to see continued growth from him. I think like what we saw a year ago is just a preview of what he's going to become this coming year. They're so deep at that down low. Not only do you have him, you have Joshua Jefferson, who I am really high on. I think he's going to be really good for St. Mary's. You also bring back Mason Forbes, the Harvard transfer. He didn't play last year. He's going to be playing a key role. Having that veteran experience on that team is going to be a huge thing for this team. And then the guy I am just waiting to see, him break out, is Harry Wessels, the big 7'1" bruising center. We saw how quickly he was taken to the game. He was a late starter to the game of basketball, so he is still learning the sport. He's still learning how to play this game. And we just saw like how he was picking it up last year, how he played against Gonzaga, how he played against UConn. He was so important against UConn because he was the only guy that they could throw in to match up just with sheer size against the likes of Donovan Clingan, the UConn center. Like this was a guy that you needed down the stretch. And again, another true freshman. He's going to still be learning how to go into his role. But something that was mentioned at Media Day and then also has been out there is Harry Wessels' mile time. And Mahaney has talked about it. Duke has talked about it. Just this is a frightening thing. So this is a guy who is the 7'1", 265, and he ran a 5:15 mile over the summer. This just, which sounds just terrifying to hear, that someone that big can run a mile that fast. But I think it speaks to the conditioning level of where he is now and how much work he has put in over the summer, that this guy is going to be a key component. And I do think we're going to see a lot of minutes from him. It'll be interesting to see kind of how that's balanced with Mitchell Saxon, because obviously that is your established all-league center, and he's going to still need a breather. He's still going to need time to really be at his peak. but this might be the best 1-2 at the center position that St. Mary's has had in a very long time, which might actually make it so that Saxon doesn't have to be playing heavy minutes earlier on in the season. And then the other one that really stands out to me is the freshman coming in, Jordan Ross. And he is the complement to Aiden Mahaney. Aiden Mahaney is the score first guard. Jordan Ross is your traditional point guard, the pass first point guard. He was playing for Arizona Compass Prep this past year. He was in the ESPN Top 100. So this is a kid who is going to make an impact, I think, very early on. He, I think, fits the Randy Bennett system well. This is going to be the first time, I think, not in a while, but definitely the first time where you're going to see a couple of point guards in the rotation on a regular basis on the court at the same time. Logan Johnson wasn't really a ball handler in that respect, but we've seen this a number of times throughout Randy Bennett's tenure where he likes to have the 2 point guards set up, where it was Emmett Naar, Jordan Ford, Emmett Naar, Joe Rahan, the Mickey McConnell, Matthew Dellavedova. You've had a number of times we've seen him with 2 point guard sets, either in the starting lineup or regular rotations on the floor. So I think this gives St. Mary's the opportunity to run those sets again, something we haven't seen in a long time. I think we also will get that a little bit more. That's Mahaney and Marshallonis as well. So they now have the guard set where you have ball handlers everywhere. And I think that's going to be a huge thing for St. Mary's going into the season. And I don't want to undersell or ignore what I think was maybe one of the biggest moves of the offseason, one of the most important, maybe the most important thing of the offseason, which was Alex Ducas's return. When that was announced at the end of year banquet, I was surprised to see that Alex Ducas was going to return. I thought that for sure that once Logan Johnson and Kyle Bowen left, he would go as well. His return means a lot because there were going to be questions about who starts at the 3 if he is not there. As much as I think Luke Barrett is a key cog in what St. Mary's is going to do, I would not put him at the level of an Alex Ducas. Alex Ducas is going to be one of the clear leaders of this team. He is one of the best, if not the best, 3-point shooter on this team. He's one of the toughest guys on this team. His return, I think, meant a lot and changed the way I thought that it changed the ceiling of which I thought this team had. I think that this team had a ceiling of getting in, maybe they were an 8 or a 9 seed, maybe a little bit lower than that, 10. Without Ducas. With him, they're back to being closer to that 5 seed where they were a year ago. And I do think he makes that much of a difference. And maybe, again, reading too much into it or not, I think that was also apparent in the game against UConn the second he went out, and it changed the game. So overall for this team, the St. Mary's team has a lot of talent. They have huge upside. I think their schedule is going to allow them a lot of opportunities to pick up good wins, much like a year ago. You can even make the case that this schedule might be even tougher than a year ago. There may not be that. They're not playing Houston this year or a game of that caliber, but I mean, there's a lot of potential in here. They played New Mexico back in Moraga. This was a New Mexico team that beat them a year ago, one of the best backcourts in the country. They'll be playing San Diego State at the Continental Tires Classic. Then they'll get either Xavier or Washington. They have Utah, Boise State. They're at Colorado State, UNLV, Kent State. All these are really good games for St. Mary's. I think that this gives them a lot of opportunity to be able to build that resume, to maybe get back to a 5 seed, maybe get right in that window. I don't know if they can be any higher than that. I think they'd really have to dominate the league. I think they'd have to win the league outright be the WCC tournament champion to get above that 5 seed line, but it gives them a good shot. I also think that this is a team that can make the second weekend. I thought that a year ago. I think they just had a bad draw a year ago because UConn being a 4 seed, as we saw, like they were underseeded. There is no way they should have been a 4 seed. They should have been higher. But that's kind of how it goes sometimes. So regardless of whether they were underseeded or whatnot, they got to the second round the last couple of years. So their building blocks are there. I think this team is capable of taking that next step. If they are able to take that next step, we know this team has a lot of young talent on it. And it really does seem that something is building here. Something big is actually building at St. Mary's. And I don't know exactly how far they have the potential to advance, but Jeff Goodman did pick St. Mary's to finish in the Final Four, to reach the Final Four, which obviously would be a huge thing for St. Mary's if that were to happen. I don't know if I want to put expectations all the way up there because a lot of things have to go right. It's so much about luck of the draw in the tournament, who gets hot at the right time, all of those sorts of things. But this team is battle tested. This team knows how to win. They've shown they can win in the NCAA tournament. So now it's just a matter of putting the pieces together and making it happen. So there's a lot of potential. I think this team is probably going to be 1-2. They're going to be 1-2 with Gonzaga again. I don't know if I'm fully set on them being the number one team outright, because I think Gonzaga is going to be right up there with them by the time conference play rolls around. But ceiling for this team is going to be second weekend of the tournament. First place in the first place WCC, first place they win the conference tournament. The low end, they're probably like an 8 or a 9 seed, and then it's, well, good luck in that first game, and then you'll end up with a 1 seed and probably get bounced. But the fact that the expectation is no longer can they, but it's where in the tournament will they be, is a big difference for this team now. Is a big difference because now everyone recognizes that this St. Mary's team is not should they be in? It's how dangerous are they once they get there? That is now the case for St. Mary's. That is now what is being talked about with this team. So high expectations, a lot of excitement that can be built around St. Mary's going into the year. Randy Bennett in his 23rd season. So we'll see how this all plays out. We'll see where this goes. And it's going to be exciting to see this team play all year long. They're going to be playing way more up-tempo, I think, than we saw in years past. Offensive weapons everywhere for this team. All right, so next thing is going to be switching over to LMU. LMU is coming off a 19-win season. Their second winning season in the last 3 seasons under Stan Johnson. He enters his 4th with the Lions. This is a team that has not had back-to-back winning seasons since 91-92. This is a team that lost a lot in the offseason. Most notably Cam Shelton. Hard to not talk about last season and not talk about the impact that he had on the year. He led that team to a win over Gonzaga in the Kennel. He led that team to a win against St. Mary's in LA. He led that team to win against BYU. He a lot of times just threw that team on his shoulders and carried them to victories. And that losing someone like that is a tough challenge to overcome. But not only that, they did also lose Justin Arndt, who was a key rotation guy for them. Jalen Anderson, Chance Stevens, who I thought was one of the better up-and-coming players in the league a year ago. All all of them are gone. So LMU has basically had to revamp the entire backcourt. You do bring back returners like Kelly Laupepe, Alex Merkviladze. You bring back Michael Graham, Rick Asanza. So the front court is still there. The front court is still imposing. There was a photo in the offseason after they had all just hit the gym or they were in the weight room and whatnot. And it was like one of the more intimidating photos I've seen of a basketball team in a long, long time. It was like, you do not want to find yourself in a dark alley with this team. This is going to be a really fascinating team. This is going to be a really tough team. I think for any team to go up against, which is why I still think that they're still going to be somewhere in that 3 to 5 range. It's just a matter of, are they going to be able to close out the deal? Are they going to be able to pick up the pieces of what they missed a year ago? And are they going to be able to clean up some of the tight games that they did have? So before we go any further, we're going to switch over and I will go ahead and listen to my interview with Stan Johnson, head coach of the LMU Lions, and we'll dive into where he thinks this team is, what potentially he thinks this team has going into the year. All right, I'm really happy to be able to bring on LMU head coach Stan Johnson. The Lions won 19 games a year ago that ended up in fourth place a year ago. And coach, just kind of take me back to last season. This was a team that really did a lot, achieved a lot a year ago. Beat Gonzaga and St. Mary's and BYU for the first time of any WCC team since the three had been together. Been able to beat Gonzaga up in the kennel for the first time in a very long time. Just take me a little bit back of like what that season meant for you, the coaching staff, the team, and then how that's going to come building into this year.
Well, how it builds, we don't know. Everything's year to year right now. You're trying to build teams, really hard to build programs. We got a whole new team. Our front court, for the most part, is back. We've added a huge piece of the front court in Lars, even from Cal. But, after that, we're pretty new. So I think, when you have some wins like that, what I hope it would do would create confidence where you don't have to wonder if you can, where it becomes more of an expectation. For our program, I think it was a sign that, all the things that we're trying to do and the culture we're trying to create, it's a great message to the players that it's working. That the hard work they're putting in and what we're trying to turn is slowly turning. You can see that, you can feel that. Before we were saying what we wanted to do, and at least you have some examples of some wins. When I'm saying wins, I'm not just saying beating St. Mary's. I'm saying wins in terms of program type stuff that's moving forward. So now when you bring new people in, there's a picture and of how it's done and how we want to do it and when you do it, what it could look like. So for our program now, it's not just about obtaining things, it's about sustaining. There's still a whole nother level or two we want to be at that we're not at yet, and that we're trying to achieve. So every year gives you an opportunity to try to reach that. And, we're hoping here, we can take that next step. And the next step is always the hardest step, because the league's really good. No one's going to give you anything. And it's what have you done for me lately? And this year so far, we haven't done anything. So you got to go earn that on the court.
For sure. And I mean, you talked about knowing that you can do it, having been there before and having that, building that confidence that it can be done. You have, I mean, you talked about that front court a little bit. It feels like you have like a core of guys who are to me, like feels like the glue guys of this team, that Kelly Lalo Pepe, Alex Merkvaladze, Rick Asanza, Michael Graham, like that front court just is an imposing group that returns in this conference. And for you guys, just got to talk about like those four and like that grouping of the returners that can really kind of like say like here carry that through and be like here's how we do it.
Yeah, I love our front court. I think, one of the things here in my time, first 2 years, we were really dealing with COVID. And everybody had to deal with it. But as you're trying to build, um, adding depth to your roster and talented depth is hard. And the thing I love about our front court, we've got real depth there. We got three guys we can play at center. Uh, all of them are different. They all have something special they bring. They complement each other. We have great size. Rick is 7'2", Lars is 7 feet. And then Mike, who is not as tall, but, he's long, he's got a 7'3" wingspan. But those guys complement each other. And, it's something we have not had, three guys that can play center. And then, having Kelly back at the 4, Alex that can play 3 and 4, and then, even Aaron McBride, who's a talented high school kid that can play at the 4, just a winning player. Those are guys. Our practices have been really competitive, and we hope those are some wars we can win when we're competing, because we feel like we've got great depth there. Like we said, last year we had an instance where Rick went down. I think we had just gotten off beaten. We were on a 4-game win streak, and he was out a few games, and you saw the impact that he had when he wasn't around. And those games really cost us. But now having another body that has size that can score, if you're ever in that kind of predicament, we're hoping that helps us. Plus, those other guys, they've been here. They've been here with me now for 3 years, going on 4. Some of them, they understand who we are, how we want to do things, and they've done a great job of indoctrinating the new guys into our program.
And again, like a lot of these guys are returning. One of the guys that is coming back, but didn't get to play last year, Noah Tate's the Stanford transfer, just kind of because obviously you have a lot of new faces on this team, and he's going to be a new face on the court, but not a new face necessarily in the locker room. What do you kind of see like from him as he's been able to get healthy and be able to be right going into the year?
Yeah, well, I'm just happy for Noah. I'm proud of him. He was in a really, really tough spot when he arrived here last summer. He had a freakish deal that no one could understand with his calf. And, it was touch and go there for a while. We didn't know what his status was going to be, not only as a player, but, just being able to move around and function and have a normal life. And, you talk about sticking to it and fighting and not giving up. Noah's been a great testament of that. And now he's put himself in a position, like today was the first day he went contact full court. So he's still building up. He's nowhere where he's gonna be, but Noah, he was a great athlete in high school, very skilled player. The one thing he can do for us is shoot the basketball, and he brings that. He's a guy who's played in high level games, and I think his shooting will be something that really helps this team and will be the value that he brings this year.
Yeah, and there's a lot of shooters you bring in because you did lose quite a bit of that from a year ago. I mean, Cam Shelton was one of the more terrifying players in this league a year ago. You got great contributions from Justin Arns, Jalen Anderson, and Chance Stevens both had opportunities, but you really went to work in the portal this offseason and really were able to bring back kind of like just like a treasure trove of guys in those guard spots. Just talk a little bit about the guys that you do bring in and just what you expect to kind of see from them this season.
Yeah, again, I felt like in my 3 years here, we've had sometimes only three guys that we could rotate at the guard spot. And, some of that was due to injuries, but we were always short there. And, right now, we have a plethora of guards. Uh, Again, just like I spoke about our front court, I think our guards are pretty dynamic. They're all different. They all do something that the other guy can't do, which is cool and fun. And there's a lot of ways to move them around. So, you know, the thing I love about our group, you have multiple guys that can play off pick and rolls, that can put the ball on the floor and create for others. I thought it was something that we were really lacking. A year ago, Cam had to do so much heavy lifting, and he did such a great job of that. But sometimes maybe too much, which was no fault of his own, but just kind of how our roster was built. This year, we have a lot of guys that can play and take the pressure off each other. So whether it's Will Johnston at one at times, or Justice Hill from LSU. Those guys are so different in how they play. I've been so impressed with Justin Wright from North Carolina Central, his ability to play downhill and his toughness, and Dominic Harris from Gonzaga has really been good too. He's got great length and size at the position. He can play off pick and rolls. He's a really good shooter. We returned Lamage Lewis, who when we were streaking last year, he was in there, then he got hurt. So to have Lamage back and add Noah to that fold, that just we have more depth, and then you have Alex who can slide at the three. So what's happened is our practices are a lot more competitive than they've ever been, and all these guys know they're playing for something, which in turn I hope will make us better.
Justice Hill was a name that definitely stood out to me, not only because he was just at LSU, but the fact that he has tournament experience being at Murray State and knowing just what it takes to kind of win at that level. And he also saw the USF team in the tournament that made it a couple seasons ago. For someone who has NCAA tournament experience, what has his presence kind of meant early on that front?
Well, he's an older guy, but we have quite a few older guys. But I think, again, being somewhere where you've seen it and having that experience and being able to share that with the guys on the team and what it looks like, is invaluable. So one of the things we thought he did a great job of in his time in that NCAA tournament run at Murray State, he was such a dynamic player when it came to taking care of the ball. I think he may have led that league in assists. So that's the thing I'm on him for here. If he can be a great assist guy with his speed and get in the paint and create momentum plays and get the ball movement and get the defenses in rotation, it's only going to help us. So his pace, his ability to pass, and then his leadership in terms of seeing it, I think that's going to bowl well in the locker room and help us get to where we want to go.
And looking at this, this team has really been able, and it really looks like on paper that this roster has really kept up with kind of what the other teams in the conference have been able to do. Because you're right, it's going to be so competitive in the WCC this coming year. Kind of talk a little bit about we can roll into the preseason schedule and what you've kind of lined up for yourself to put yourself in a good position by the time we get to conference play.
Yeah, we always try to play a difficult non-conference schedule. I don't know how smart that is on my end, but we've done it every year I've been here. You look at our schedule now. Second game of the year we have Yale at home. Yale's picked to win the Ivy League. I saw some the other day. They were one of the top 10 mid-major programs in the country. Preseason, Coach Jones does a tremendous job there. So even playing a team like that early, and having them here is incredible. I mean, I feel like we're playing the whole Mountain West. We've got Colorado State. We redid that home and home series. They'll be here this year at our place. We go to Nevada. We restarted that series with Nevada. Both those teams will be competing at the top of that league. We're
Mhm.
playing UNLV on a neutral floor in Vegas. UNLV is really good. We have Santa Barbara on the neutral floor, the Colangelo Classics, and I think Santa Barbara's picked to win the Big West. And Joe does such a great job with that program. We're taking our team to the Cayman Islands. I think that's a really, really good tournament. With a bunch of good teams in it. We've got UTEP at home, so we have no easy games, and every game is going to be much like a WCC game. And it's our hope that if we can take care of business in the non-conference, it helps us once we get into conference. But um, for us, it's always one day at a time, one game at a time, but we've got the right schedule,
Mhm.
and it's going to require our very best.
Early on in the season, like one of the things is going to obviously be trying to figure out what the rotations are and figuring out what's going to work best in these early non-conference games. What do you think who has been maybe one of the more pleasant surprises early on as you've kind of started to really get going these last few weeks of practice?
Yeah. I don't know if we've had a pleasant surprise. What I would tell you, sometimes in recruiting, especially in the portal, you know, you can get a guy and maybe he's not what you thought. And that happens to the best of all of us. Um, what I've been surprised with is everybody to this point has been what we thought they would be. And I think that's a good starting point. I still don't know who's going to do what when the light comes on because we haven't played together. It's a new team for
Right.
a lot of these guys, new league. So a lot of that's yet to be determined. But daily, I'm impressed with, you know what? I thought he was going to be that. And to this point, he is that. So I think our new guys have done a very good job of acclimating themselves and being who they are. And who that's been has been pleasing to me. And I'd much rather be in that situation than, man, that guy, he's nowhere close to what I thought. But that being said, there's still the whole other test. What do you do when the lights come on? Who are you late in the game? The other thing I'd say with our team, um, we don't have starters and subs. We're going to have starters and finishers. And our lineups can change every game based on a matchup. That's what we have. We're not going to, who starts may not be who finishes. And who finishes may not be who starts. And I think that's the beauty of this team. So as long as we can buy into that and have that holistic approach that, the sum of this team is greater than the parts, that's how we're going to have success. And that may look different on any given night. And that's what this group has to buy into.
And this team historically at LMU, you guys have the opportunity to do something that hasn't been done in a while, and I think it's that this LMU team has not had back-to-back winning seasons in a very long time, and this team has the opportunity to break through that. And as has that, what sort of conversation is there about like just where LMU has been historically, and then maybe the opportunity that presents itself for this coming year?
I'm a big believer history takes care of itself if you take care of what you're supposed to take care of. And, you know, we're always about moment to moment. We just want to win the moment. And I'm not saying that as a cliche. I really believe that. I'm not just throwing that out there. I believe that. We're we have to be so process driven and not result based. Because if you focus on that, you're going to miss a lot of steps. So my thing to our guys is let's try to win every moment and let's be good. And let's have a good day. And let's have another good day. And let's have another good day. And let's just stack them. And wherever we get, we'll get, but there's no projecting. We want to look back and be proud of history. Um, and the only way to do that is to make sure our habits are really good, and we're building that every single day. And if we do that, we'll be in a good spot. Those are the things we spent 99.9% of our time talking about.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Coach, for hopping on, taking some time. Good luck this season. I'm sure we'll see each other down the road. And yeah, we've only a few weeks before the first game, so I'm sure you're excited.
Yeah, we're ready to go. And like I told my team today, we're in that stretch. All coaches and players are in that stretch right now where you can get in the dog days. Everybody's excited and ready and tired of seeing each other. And I told them today we just got to make sure we don't wish any days away. Life's too short. Don't wish any day away for another day to come. Let's just try to get better in these next couple of weeks. So I'm actually trying to slow it down so we can get better in these next few weeks so we can put a good product on the floor. But I appreciate you having me, and you do a great job.
Thanks, Coach.
Awesome.
Want to thank Coach Stan Johnson for hopping on one more time. So this LMU squad, this LMU team is going to be fascinating because of the number of guards that they bring in and then how that rotation is going to look. I think this is maybe LMU's deepest team in a long, long time. Coach talked about it a bit about how now he has options. This is one of the deeper teams he has had, if not the deepest team he's had at LMU. And we did see it the last couple of years that they have been bit by the injury bug, and having now a depth and a wealth at almost every position is only going to be beneficial to this team. And also just thinking about the leadership of a guy like Justice Hill, Juice Hill, coming over from Murray State, because he knows how to win. He won 30 games with that team. He was the point guard of that team. Coach made reference to that success. He was like he had 5.1 assists per game that last year at Murray, 2.66 assists to turnover ratio, which was like sixth in the country. He was the OVC tournament MVP that year. That is a guy who brings that sort of leadership, brings that experience of how do I get to the next level? How do I get there? And yeah, it is going to be tougher in the WCC because it's not like the Murray State had to run into a Gonzaga in conference play. It's not like they had to run into a St. Mary's in conference play. Murray State largely is the class of the OVC, and LMU is still building to be in that conversation. They are still building to be a consistent winner. There's still growth that is coming from this squad, but they have a lot of opportunity. With BYU's exit from the league, it does open up a huge opportunity for the solidification of who is that third team, who is the branded third team of the WCC. Even if BYU had finished fifth the last couple of years, the conversation going into every year was always Gonzaga, St. Mary's, BYU. It always was. From the time that they entered the league, it was those three. Who is going to step into that role and be it's Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and who? Who is that next one? Is it USF? Is it LMU? Is it Santa Clara? What I think Stan Johnson has done with the transfer portal, a lot of people really high on all of the pickups. Justice Hill, Justin Wright from NC Central is going to be a big pickup, 16 points per game a year ago, 40% three-point shooter. Dominic Harris is going to be an interesting component to all of this, moving on from Gonzaga. Coach has talked about it like he's probably maybe the most talented guy out there. Lawrence Thyman coming over from Cal. Even though Cal was terrible a year ago, this was a guy who gave you numbers: 9.5 points per game, 5.4 rebounds. And we know the WCC is a big, big league, just size wise. When you look at the top, you look at what Gonzaga brings in size wise. You look at what St. Mary's brings in size wise. You look at what Santa Clara and USF have also brought in. LMU is needed height. They have strength. I think that was one thing that I don't think there was much of a issue there, but they needed the size, and they were a little thin at that position last year. The couple games where Rick Asanza missed, they were a different team, and you saw that. We saw that with USF last year without Johan Masalski, how different they were as a team without that size. This is a league where you need size, you need playable size, and LMU has that. I think they have the depth of that. This is a team that, again, they kind of run too deep almost everywhere. So this is a really fascinating, interesting LMU team to kind of follow, to watch. I think Noah Tate's coming back is also going to be a huge lift for this team. And they still have some things to clean up. One of the things I don't think they've really had over the last couple of years is a true point guard, and they finally do have that with Juice Hill, someone who's going to take care of the basketball. Turnovers had been a problem the last couple of years, which is part of the reason why they had dropped some of those close games. And if with that cleaned up, there is opportunity for LMU to get St. Mary's early on in conference play. There's an opportunity for them to get Gonzaga. Now, I do think that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge because those two teams have long memories. I don't think they're going to forget that they both lost to LMU a year ago. We know Gonzaga did not forget when they saw them the second time. But for this team is also, what's the next step? Back-to-back winning seasons, I think, is a low bar of what this team wants to accomplish. They want to try to get to the NCAA tournament. That's everyone's goal. The schedule kind of sets them up well to build a solid resume, to at least be in the conversation. They're at the Cayman Islands Classic. They'll be playing Stephen F. Austin to kick it off. Then they'll either take on Oakland or Drake, and Drake is going to be a really good team. They potentially could see Utah State in that tournament as well. That would be a good game. And then they have a trio of other games against Mountain West opponents. At Nevada, they host Colorado State. They're going to be playing a neutral against UNLV. So there are chances for them in the non-conference, and very much like a lot of those teams who are building towards something, who are building, trying to get into the tournament, you have your margin for error becomes small. And that is where I think LMU is when it comes to a potential tournament bid, is that the margin for error is small, very small. You have to clean up the games you're supposed to win in the non-conference. You have to clean up the games you're supposed to win in conference. You can't really drop one of those games, because that means then you have to be perfect against your big opportunities, or it puts more pressure on those games. Do I think they can get in without having beat St. Mary's or Gonzaga? Yeah, I do. They can do that. They can get in if they don't beat those two teams, but then they have to beat everybody else. That is what really has to happen. They can't really lose. Let's say they get Utah State, Nevada, UNLV, Colorado State. If they were to not beat Gonzaga or St. Mary's in conference play, it feels like to me that they have to beat at least three of those four teams from the Mountain West to get in. And one of those may not even be a guarantee. So let's even take the three guaranteed games. Nevada, UNLV, Colorado State probably have to win two of the three to give yourself a few notches in your belt. And then even then might not be enough. You would still, I think, have to clean up everything else in the WCC. I don't think you necessarily have to win every other game outside of Gonzaga, St. Mary's, but you have to come close. And the losses would have to come to Santa Clara or USF. They can't come to San Diego. They can't be losses to Pacific or Pepperdine. You're going to have to pick up wins elsewhere. So with LMU, I think, again, lots of potential. I think the they have the low. Their floor is probably right around 500, and I think obviously like if they're around 500, they're not in the postseason. Uh, do think the ceiling is an NIT bid. I don't think they have quite. I think they would just be on the outside looking in on being on the NCAA tournament bubble if everything goes right. Now, I hope all of that is wrong. I hope they actually are able to put together and exceed that expectation that I have, or that I think now is where do I think they'll land? I think I think they could be an NIT team. I think that would be a huge step for this program. I think that'd be a big thing, especially if they were to host an NIT game. That would be another big step for LMU and that program. All right, so next one to go to is going to be Pacific. And this Pacific team is all right. I want to kind of start with saying that a lot of times, myself included, the Tigers get overlooked. Pacific gets overlooked for a lot of reasons. One, I think because they many times have finished toward the bottom of the league since they rejoined the WCC, but also because they haven't had like that marquee player, that marquee star that you kind of look at and say, yeah, that's the guy. Because even when they were finishing top half of the league for a few years, really who everyone looked at was Damon Stoudemire. So finding the guys that are going to make the difference for this Pacific team, I think it's not as hard, but it's like you a lot of times forget because they don't not every last one of them jumps off the screen at you, and part of that comes along with team success as well. And this Pacific team did finish tied for fifth a year ago. I think that a lot of times gets lost. This team did finish tied with BYU at 7-9. They finished 15-18. So they were below 500 in Leonard Perry's second year. So going into year 3. So big things to look at from a year ago. What this team did well, did not do well. This team was the best 3-point shooting team in the WCC. They were a 39% 3-point shooting team. A lot of that was from Luke Avdalovich. Like he was a big component of that 3-point shooting barrage. Another key strength of this Pacific team a year ago was their depth. This was a team that had 7 of its top 10 players average more than 13 minutes a game. Or sorry, actually it was 10 players who averaged 13 or more minutes per game a year ago. 7 of those guys returned. So there's a lot of depth to this squad. And I think that's another thing. Again, just the way this team plays, like you're not going to see one look as often as you might see with some other teams. Obviously, think about Gonzaga, St. Mary's. A lot of their guys are going to be playing 30 plus minutes a game. You won't see that with Pacific. You're going to see a lot of different combinations and amalgamations of this team and the roster pieces that they have. Those were some of the things they did really well a year ago. But this was a terrible rebounding team. They had the worst rebounding margin in the WCC at negative 5.3 per game. And it got worse in WCC play at minus 7.1. Largely because the Pacific is not a big team. They don't have a lot of size. And they didn't a year ago. However, they do bring in a couple of pieces that they hope are going to help solve that. Or they're going to see more minutes for some of the pieces that they hope are going to solve that. Mekhi Richards, who did get some minutes a year ago. He was a transfer from Eastern Washington last year. 6'10", 225. He's going to get a good amount of the run. One of the newcomers in Burke Smith from Boise State, he's going to get a lot more of that run and get a lot of those minutes. So there's going to be added size to this Pacific team, which should hopefully help them on the rebounding front. But we know it's not just the centers. That's going to be a collective team effort to be able to really hit the boards and to do more with the team that they have. One of the interesting pieces I really liked a year ago was Mo Odom. Uh, Sophomore does come back. I really liked what we saw from him toward the end of the season. Last 19 games of the year, he had 15 games where he had 4 or more assists, 9 where he had 5 or more. Double-digit score in 4 of his last 6 games, including 22 against Pepperdine. And I know Pepperdine was not a good defensive team, but still, this is a kid who's really starting to kind of come into his own, really starting to figure it out. His averages for the year, it was like he had 5.6 points per game, 3.5 assists in only 15 minutes. So I think we're going to see a lot of really nice things from Odom going into this season. I think we're going to see him develop a lot into that star point guard that Pacific has not had in a while. So it's going to be really exciting to see his development and where he goes. And then similarly is Tyler Beard and what he can do. Last year, he played 22 minutes a game. Again, we talked about this. A lot of guys who played a lot of minutes. 9.1 points per game, 43% from 3. I'm really excited to kind of see where he goes. He started 11 games last year of those, and let's see. Sorry, I'm looking at just reading the numbers. So yeah, he started 11 games last year, 22 minutes per game. It's going to be really exciting to kind of see what he's able to do, how he starts to fit into the rest of the puzzle. One of the guys that Coach Perry is really excited by is LaShawn Hallam's coming over from South Carolina State. So he'll bring some senior leadership to the squad, which does need it. They don't have this is a younger team that Pacific will have going into the year. Because you don't have the likes of Kalen Boone, Jordan Ivy Carter, Luke Avdalovich already mentioned he's gone. So you have some of your senior leadership, your more veteran leadership having moved on. Even Brooke Smith coming in, he's a redshirt junior, so he's been in college basketball for a while. So between he and Hallams, there's going to be a lot of leadership there. Hallam started 20 games a year ago. He averaged north of 10 and a half a game. He was a double figure scorer 13 times and had 20 or more 3 times for South Carolina State. So so again, like this Pacific team is going to be an interesting watch. I think that they finished 5th year ago. I don't see that this year. I think that what the other teams in the league have done to improve their rosters, I think makes that a tough ask, a tough challenge for this team to reach that height, and get up there. I don't think that this Pacific team really has that level of a ceiling, but they're going to have opportunities early on to test themselves. They do have Sam Houston State. They're going to be at Cal, at Nevada, at Fresno State. This Pacific team is not. I think that they have a shot. It's not like that they're not going to win anything. I do think this Pacific team is talented. This Pacific team is going to be tough, just like they have been the last few years. Keep in mind that this was a Pacific team that had Gonzaga on the ropes in Stockton last year. That was, I think, just days before they ended up losing to LMU. Gonzaga losing to LMU, I mean. So where do I see Pacific? Where do I see this team kind of falling in the giant pecking order? I think this is still going to be a building year. I don't know if they quite get to 500 this year because I do think they're going to struggle a little bit more in conference play. I think that the ceiling for this team is maybe getting above 500, like maybe a few games above. The ceiling, I think, could be also 6th place in the WCC. I think that they could finish just behind that trio in the middle. So I think they can leapfrog Portland. I think they can get above Pepperdine. San Diego, I think, is the clear 10 with the way just their roster is set up and the way everyone else's roster is set up right now. But I think the floor is probably the floor for them if everything goes wrong is 9th. in the WC, or sorry, not 9, there's 10 now teams. 8th place in the WCC. I don't, I don't, I don't see that happen. I think they are probably closer to 7th right now than they are to 8th, and I do think there's a better chance of them finishing above 500 than there is below 500. But I do think the floor is them finishing probably 5-6 games below 500. They did finish 3 games below 500 this past year. So if everything goes wrong, we know what it could look like. If everything goes right, who knows? Like, they could actually flip some of these games that they didn't particularly play well in last year. That rebounding margin is a huge thing to try to fix and to work on. If that becomes a positive, if that becomes not necessarily a strength, but not something that is a detriment, that could also really change a lot of their fortunes going into throughout the season, going into the season, and how that looks. So Pacific somewhere 7 to 8 in conference, 6 to 8, I should say, in conference. And I'll do a more full breakdown of where I think the standings are going to be in just a couple weeks. So when we get there, I'll dive into all of that. Pacific, I think, is just a fascinating team to watch. I think there's a lot of talent on this team to keep an eye on. It may not be the flashiest. It may not be the team we pay attention to because somehow they get lost in the shuffle. But much like last year, don't sleep on Pacific, because team slept on them a year ago and they ended up surprising some people. So keep an eye on the Tigers. Do not completely dismiss them out of hand. All right. So that'll wrap up this week's preview. So again, we had 3 this week, 3 next week. 3 this week, 3 last week, 3 this week. I did USF Santa Clara and Pepperdine last week. This coming week will be Gonzaga, Portland, and San Diego. So be sure to check those out when they become live next week. Also, each of the previews are broken out individually on the YouTube page, so you can go ahead and check it out there if you want to just watch the one single team preview. So yeah, be sure to take a look, check it out there, all of that, and then for the rest of the preseason, I'll also make the individual interviews available on the YouTube page as well. So be sure to go over there, subscribe to that. There's going to be a lot more content coming out as we get closer to the season. The week before the season actually starts, I'll do all the season my season preview picks. Save that for kind of like the penultimate episode before we get to the season. And that will wrap up this episode. I do want to thank Coach Stan Johnson for hopping on one more time. It was great to have him on. We'll be having another interview next week to kind of go preview again the Gonzaga, Portland, San Diego trifecta and see where those teams are going to land. We did finally get a San Diego schedule, so we'll also review that and where we see the Toreros going to be in year 2 under Steve Lavin. All right. We'll get out of here. Be sure to follow on all the social channels at Post by Zach. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Unofficial WCC Hoops Podcast. I'm Zach Farmer, and I will catch you later.